Hello, welcome to Dissident Canada. My name is Tyler. Today's video is about Trump and his domestic economic plan, which happens to be an addendum to Monday's video about economic nationalism or a national capitalism setup, because you can obviously see the flaws of free market and the strength of the nation state not being copacetic with each other at this point in time. I made that, I believe, before Trump announced the deal with Intel and the fact that the United States government now has a 10% stake in Intel that they underpaid for, although technically they overpaid. But I will get into that. Before I get any further, I think what Trump did was incredibly foolish and very stupid. But I think I understand the move and how it fits into, again, my framework of a, national economic capitalism, so to speak. Before I begin, I just want to point out exactly how stupid this is. One, this is just, there's a lot of people out there saying, oh, communism, this is communism. I don't vote for communism. It's not fucking communism, you idiot. And I mean that as politely as I can. I am, excuse me now. I am saying this from the point of, like, your friend saying, fuck you, you're wrong, and then showing you the truth. All right? It's not communism. Communism is when the state completely operates the entire economy. It is a command economy from the top down. There is no private ownership of business. Fascism, on the other hand, does have a private component to the economy. It allows you to open small businesses and even grow them. But at a certain point, the size of the business becomes an interest to the state, and the state, at least in the past, hasn't taken overt control over it, but makes suggestions that must be followed. You can see this in World War II Germany. You can see this in Italy. You can see this in other places where fascism has been tried. It is not in exactly the same type of command economy. It has a, as I like to put it, a veneer of capitalism, of a free market. But it is similar to communism, and the state has an overreaching command of the economy, but it's not exactly the same thing. So it is more fascistic in nature. Why I think this is completely stupid is you are investing in Intel. I have brought up on a few occasions here on this channel why Intel is in trouble. Intel is at the point now where their only basically profitable business sector that the Intel Corp at large owns, because it's a subsidiary of that, is the chip fabrication business. Intel doesn't make all of their chips, but they are attempting to, and they do some interesting stuff, especially when it comes to graphics processing units, also known as GPUs or graphics cards. They are, again, extremely interesting, very early days in their development of this thing. You can go to a computer store and buy them. There are problems. They are getting better. It is a very interesting business. But, okay, the rest of Intel may as well be on different alarm levels of fire, okay? Their CPUs, the central processing unit, is not in a great place, whether that's in the server space or in the consumer slash professional market that you can get. They're okay. Do they work? Yes. They run insanely hot. They are overpriced, in my opinion, and they have to compete with competitive pricing and very competitive performance from AMD with their Ryzen lineup of CPUs, and just AMD is having a lot less problems. Intel also has the problem that their most recent generations have had uh, oxidization problems. It appears to be mostly solved through BIOS updates, which is just updating the software that actually runs the microprocessors on the damn things. Um, but that's still a large problem to have, that by default, your chips, when run, rust. That is what oxidization is, if you didn't know. That is really funny objectively if you don't have skin in the game. If you got skin in the game, you're pissed at Intel. Um, and another big thing is Intel makes a lot of its money from the licensing of x86 architecture. I am not getting into the nitty gritty of that. That's basically what the vast majority of consumer computers are built off of. The instruction set that they understand is called x86. Um, and this is coming at a time when ARM, which is not using an x86 instruction set, is gaining traction, because, especially in the mobile spaces, because ARM is power efficient, and it the way you can plug in chiplets to design chips, like just like the actual dies on the thing, is fascinating beyond belief. If ARM was an American company, all right, I would be very, even in this overbought market, I would be contemplating uh, how much to buy, because ARM for the future looks like a very competitive chip maker. Um, as long as ARM continues to grow, like it's growing in Linux spaces, specifically on servers, because ARM server chips seem to be doing really good with like AI and stuff. Even though that bubble's popping, like ARM is a very interesting future for computers. Requires a whole bunch of problems to be solved, such as having an x86 instruction translation layer so that you have backwards compatibility with current software instead of having to port all that shit over, which would cost a whole crap ton of money. But anyways, Intel's in financial straits. This deal is a bad deal when you look at, like, again, the CEO is rumored to have been like, hey, we need to sell some shit off. What can we get rid of? And he was like, well, these fabs are worth a lot. The fab business is worth. Let's sell that. Like, it's the only interesting thing Intel's doing other than their GPUs. But anyways, so you've got all that problem. All right. Now, people are saying the reason why Trump made this deal, which I will say is actually a fairly decently done deal. So when you add up all the money the U.S. government is giving Intel, or has given Intel, it's like 11 point whatever billion dollars. That's because that includes previously allocated CHIPS Act money. All right. And other grants. So there's no, in the 8.9 billion deal that Trump has made, it is not new money. It is already made or previously allocated money from the United States. They are just now getting a cut of Intel for this investment money. Most of this is from the CHIPS Act. Some of it is other grants to get Intel to build in America. So it's a, again, structured wise, it's a good deal. Implementation, it's a bad fucking deal. Now, people are saying this is, or I was watching Robert Barnes, and he came to the conclusion, and other people have come to the conclusion, that Trump is doing this so that the American government has a disproportionate amount of sway over Intel and can effectively enforce, like, import and export restrictions on China. It may just, and that could be very well be. This could be done because Intel, again, is like a sinking ship. So it's just, it'll be easy to get a deal structured with them. They can get their CHIPS Act money faster. And, that they don't have to implode. And it then allows the United States as a shareholder to be very much involved in a lot of important things that would give them say. Like, I think this may even put the United States government on the board of the directors, or it could put them in contending for that because they have such a large share. I'd have to research more, but I would believe that's where it would put them, which is really interesting concept to think about. Not a part of this deal. Anyways, that justification of why Trump did this, I don't think that's the reason. One, I think Intel is the reason why you would do this. Okay, other than, hey, we're going to bail out our buddies at Intel to stop Intel from failing. All right, is what Intel is an American company. Okay, you can onshore with all this stuff back to America. The government can, twist Intel's arm and bring jobs back to America. Okay, that's great. You get a certain amount of control over Intel as well, more so than you get through regulatory means, without becoming super duper shady. Like, you can extort people through regulations, but it's frowned upon. It happens, but it's frowned upon. Another reason I think this is going through is because Intel is a relatively advanced chip designer and fabricator. Trump has, all his deals that he's making is to benefit America, not just now, even though I don't think all of them benefit now. I think they are hegemon moves, all right? What I mean that is, if you are top dog, you are always under threat. You have to realize you are at war. You are constantly at war to remain at the top. So you have to think differently. And you have to think long term if you wish to stay up there. That is why, the Greenland deal that Trump has been trying to make for forever. It's about securing the Arctic. Having rapprochement with the Russians is, again, all about the Arctic. Canada, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Part of that is most likely also controlling the Arctic. Like, Canada gets a lot of, I think we have international waters, or like our waters go like basically all the way up to the North Pole. And if, we make a deal with the United States, that becomes uncontested, because right now they're contested. There's a whole bunch of stuff with the northern border of Canada that is really fascinating with international law, but So Trump tries to keep making these plays to secure America's future as the global hegemon. I am not saying these are the right moves to make. I'm saying these are the moves that are happening. Big difference. So if you frame it like that, okay, you've got Intel, American company that can do very interesting things, makes very interesting chips to a certain degree, and was at least fairly dominant, and very easily could become again. Like if they start poaching AMD's Ryzen people again, which I think were Intel people to begin with. It's weird, but if they start poaching back some talent, they could be fairly competitive. Um, what does this do? This secures at least one advanced microprocessor producer for the United States exclusively. Okay? Like if this was just about exports into China, you would want to make a deal with Intel. Well, yes, Intel, but more importantly, AMD, Nvidia, and TSMC, and most likely ARM as well, before you got to Intel. Like, you can't make this deal with Texas Instruments, the only other, I would say, name that people might know, mostly because of their calculators, um, that make microprocessors. And that's because TI does, like, again, TI itself does fairly interesting stuff. Um, but, like, all their advancements are either in, like, weird niche products, like, again, graphing calculators, which I have mine somewhere, and I had it at one point set up to play Doom because why not? It can, it must. Um, but most of like where you'll see TI products, or at least I've experienced it, is in like power stages. For at least personal computers, the chips that regulate the power delivery in the voltage regulation module. Some in depth about computer parts. Um, they're very interesting, and they have, I believe they have some smart power stages that do some really interesting stuff. Um, they've got some, I think they do some inductors that are really nice, but like they mostly I think where I've seen them is in smart power stages that will and have doublers and shit, and it's really interesting nerdy electronic shit. If you want to find out about that, I would search for actually hardcore overclocking, I think is the channel name. Guy who runs it does like PCB breakdowns on occasion, and is like really into that, you know, getting as much out of a chip as possible, doing absurd shit, like putting it on liquid nitrogen, dry ice, all that stuff. And to do that, you have to have a really good understanding of the electrical engineering behind the design. And again, the PCB breakdown videos are fantastic. He breaks down like in the best level of autistic detail of how that shit works and the why, and maybe why you don't want to buy that. Um, so it's interesting. So the way I see this deal, okay, with Intel, is Trump is trying to secure the technological home front, make sure that America, again, because this is not his personal investment, this is the United States government investing in Intel, owning shares of Intel, all right, which gives them, again, control. And it gives them a technological, not edge, but a partner that they can use to fight back with China, which really isn't necessary, especially if you've been watching recently the China show. You understand that China's technology is mostly smoke and mirrors and is largely garbage. Are they getting there on some things? Sort of, kind of, maybe. The biggest bottleneck for them is they don't get access to the one company on earth that makes the highly advanced fabrication machines to make advanced chips. I think it's what is it? I think it's I believe the technology is ultraviolet lithography, and they tout it as 2 nanometer. It's not actually making stuff at 2 nanometer, or I mean, it can 2 nanometer in size. It is the level of detail it can do is 2 nanometers. Big difference. Marketing took over like 15 years ago or so. The nanometer definition for computer chips, and they are meaningless. But back to my point, China doesn't have access to that company to buy that stuff, so they are having to engineer their own shit because, again, that is a company that if it was an American company, I would be pretty balls deep in because it's extremely important to the global supply of chips, especially advanced microchips. But I believe it's a Dutch company, and it is to buy from them, all right? You have to be whitelisted by multiple different governing bodies. You can't just go to them as say you have a company that wants to start building chips. You can't just go to them and say, hey, I'd like to make $1 billion order of your machines. No. You have to get approved. And then you get put on the wait list, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the wait list is also ranked in order of importance. So TSMC, the most important chip manufacturer in the world, always gets their shit. Always. But, anyways. So, my point of saying that is China has to reverse engineer their shit. Or has to make it their own way. That's going to take a lot of time because it's not exactly easy to build advanced microchips. You need to have, first, the machines, and two, you have to have construction companies that are able to build extremely accurately. Like, it is a higher precision than with nuclear reactors. Because you're dealing with such a small level of detail, you have to drill down and build foundation onto bedrock. And then even on top of that, you have to have extreme vibration dampening basically everything. All right? Because, again, the level of detail you are dealing with is 2 freaking nanometers. If you do not understand how small that is, I highly search the internet to see how small a nanometer is. And you're doing 2 of those to be, right now, most advanced stuff that is coming out of TSMC. That is the top of the line shelf that you're looking at. I think Samsung's got 3 nanometer. So, like, extremely technical construction, and you have to be precise. China doesn't really have that. It has Chinese popcorn construction. What was it? Earlier in the year, Taiwan had was it Taiwan? No, it was Thailand. Maybe it was Singapore. One of those places had a earthquake, a mild one, 5 something. Enough to shake you, not enough to rattle you. All right? The only building that collapsed was the one built by the Chinese developer because it was made of Chinese concrete. It was a Chinese popcorn building. So, I don't think you have to make such serious plays for the security of advanced microchips because China just can't make them. And Russia's having similar problems, not with the construction of the building itself, but in the construction of the fabs and making them. Like, you have to learn a whole bunch of really niche applied material physics that isn't taught anywhere. So you kind of have to learn it, and then you think about, like, um, if you've worked in a highly technical industry for any given period of time, there's a bunch of little tiny things you've picked up along the ways to make a very your whatever product you are producing or service that much better. They also have to learn all that crap that TSMC and that company in, I think, Denmark has had, because they've been doing it for like 30 or 40 years at such a high level. Like, you have to learn all that crap. So it's very, very interesting. But again, my whole point of the video is, if you are looking at this Intel deal and saying anything other than this is a play by a hegemon to secure a sector that they are not competitive with at this moment and to remain dominant, I think you're kind of missing the point of this play. Like, Donald Trump comes off as a blustering dipshit, and sometimes that's who he is. He has done a lot of dipshit moves. But he is making moves to secure the United States hegemony. I disagree with what he's doing. I think it's a very bad idea. But my opinion doesn't exactly fucking matter. Because, one, I'm not being consulted, and two, it's not being listened to. So that's my take on the Intel deal. Again, I really think people are missing big on what it's really, really about. I don't think it's a bailout for Intel, because they were already getting that money. All right? I don't think it's a way to secure future bailouts, by hitching yourself to the horse, because I don't think Intel would do that. They made a deal with Israel and built a plant in Israel, and you can see what's happening in Israel right now. I don't think they would make that deal tying their hitch to the horse. Honestly, from the Intel side, the only thing I can see is they're going to get the CHIPS Act money faster. Like, that's all I can see. Anything else, I don't understand the Intel side of this deal, to be fair. Like, the Trump side, I think I understand much better. Like, getting in bed with a government to this extent for Intel. Like, a 10% stake is quite a large stake, because at, any point in the future, like, the next United States president could just dump that all at once. That is a lot of selling pressure, and when you consider in, the shorts that are likely to be on Intel, you could see people get fucking margin called on their calls and just tank the price of Intel in a day by like 20 or 30%, if not more. I mean, that's That's if the cutoffs don't, cut off. Like you could see just a straight line down. Like a 10% stake is large, especially when you're considering. I don't think Intel has that large of a float, which basically just means shares on the market. Like if the shares on the market are less than 1%, a 10% drop, like a 10% availability, will just tank the market price if there's no massive buying pressure. Like this is a highly risky move that I don't think pays off, but I think I understand the move. I still think it's dumb, but I understand it, I think. Anyways, that's the video for today. I think tomorrow I'm going to talk about the likes of Tulsi, JD Vance, and Cash and Dan Bongino, and what they are doing in specific instances, such as with Russiagate stuff and stuff that is related to it. It's fascinating what they are trying to do. I called it out quite early, but it's worth revisiting now, seeing that they have a repeated history of it. I still don't think it's gonna happen, but we'll see. Until then, have a good day.